Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a lovely Siggraph so far. Yeah, my name's Tim Kafka. Today, I'm going to be talking about a project the Mill did in collaboration with HP for the launch of their new Z8 Fury workstation. And this project is called The Drop. So what is The Drop? Uh, to mark the release of their new workstation, HP wanted to create this dramatic test that was going to be a stunt to show how powerful their new top of the line desktop is. There were a lot of ideas being batted around, uh, all kinds of different things, with water or whatever. But the one that finally kind of emerged as the winner was this concept of the drop. So the elevator pitch of this is, they're going to take the Z8 Fury, they're going to put it in an airplane, they're going to start, a computationally expensive task on it, push it out of the airplane. It's going to fall for as long as it takes to do the task. That will trigger the parachute, hopefully saving the workstation from, hitting the ground in the middle of the desert and exploding. So that was the pitch. Of course, they're going to film this. They're going to do this as a real life stunt, and this is going to become a campaign for them. So my mission in this was to create the benchmark scene that's going to go on the Z8 Fury. That would be rendering when it falls to the sky. There's some interesting things about this job that are different from a normal VFX job, which is obviously that, you know, it's on a welded desk that's custom made with a battery power supply, a bolted Z8 Fury, a parachute, and a professional skydiver who is thankfully not me. So the least important thing first. Who am I? My name's Tim Kafka. Like I said, I'm the head of creative operations at the Mill in LA. A lot of you probably know what the Mill is, but we're a visual effects company mainly working in advertising. We have an amazing roster of artists working globally together in our network, and we make some of the best VFX in the industry. Um, we're well known for creating like film quality VFX on an advertising timeline. And in my role, it's my responsibility to represent the artists in technology decisions, both like locally and globally, and job by job. Um, I also work on defining workflows, improving our workflows, implementing new technology, and making sure we document that technology and educate our artists on how to use it. Um, so my background, I'm a CG journalist. I've worked as a CG supervisor for many years, and I was the head of 3D MPC in the Mill for quite a few years. And then I moved into my current role. Very importantly, I am not an actor at all, and I'm not going to change my career anytime soon for sure. So how did we get involved with this project? So the Mill and HP have a long partnership, like both VFX partnership and as a technology partner through the years. Um, my good friend Jason Lau at Giant Spoon, who's HP's Z's agency, just contacted me about this project. It started as a normal conversation talking about let's make this, test scene, the VFX requirements. I'm feeling good and comfortable about this. And then that's about the time that Cole Pavar, who's a director at Unit 9, came into it. And that's when it started to get fleshed out, and actual scripts and storyboards were being made about how they're going to shoot this. And that's about the time that things like this started to pop up, like this highlighted portion below that says, Tim watches as her desk slides out of the plane. And I suddenly realize, I guess I'm in this commercial now. Uh, so Thankfully, the plane was too small to fit like the desk and the skydivers and the cameraman. So I got to sit, comfortably in the desert at 99 degrees, and just all I had to do was stare stressfully at a screen, which I've done a lot of in my life. So that was pretty simple. Yeah. So, if you're looking for someone to be a ground crew for an episode of 24, I'm here for you. Anyways, let's get on to actually making the project because that's really more the fun part of this conversation. Um, I was planning this project, and HP pretty much gave me free reign to come up with something. And uh, I, as a CG artist, have always loved making CG environments. And I just immediately thought, let's make a CG environment for this. We'll make it as complex as we possibly can to make it actually work in this, in these constraints. So for inspiration, we knew that we were going to be shooting in Anza-Borrego Desert State Park, which is, out in California, maybe a few hour drive from here. So I went and searched, just kind of scoping out what was there and what might be visually inspiring. And immediately, kind of the hero of this that really stood out to me is just the Anza-Borrego, topography. These really eroded, dry desert, foothills and mountains. You can see them up there, so in the back of the stage here. So that was kind of the first thing I latched onto, and I know I wanted to kind of base this whole project around that. But I wanted to go a little beyond that and push it into something more, fantastical. So I turned to our good friends, AI concepting here. So I was using Midjourney AI. This is about over a year ago now that we started this project. So just bouncing around ideas how we could stylize, Anza Borrego, make it more fantastic with the lighting or with different levels of fog and everything. Um, it's really interesting to see how the conversation about AI has changed so quickly and grown in a discussion between, from year to year. Like what was new a year ago is now so old hat. But in this case, like AI concepting, it's just was a great tool for churning through a bunch of ideas when I really didn't know exactly what I was after. And then being able to be really effective when then I moved on to working with one of our, human artists at the mill who finished the concepting and finished some of the 2D elements that were going to be going into this project. So that's kind of my favorite way to use AI is to be more efficient, but not to replace anyone who's actually doing the artist's work. Um, so we combined a bunch of photographic elements that we owned so that we could use them in the final image. So let's move on to actually building, this 3D scene. As we got to working on it, I knew I needed to be pretty strategic about how this was going to be made because this job had these very tight requirements. Um, the main things that we were dealing with is this scene needs to render in about 30 seconds. On our traditional VFX pipeline, that's not how fast photoreal CG environment is going to take. Uh, so that was about how much free fall time, 30 seconds, that they're going to have with this parachute. Otherwise, the divers and the computer were going to be at risk. So that was the first thing. Second thing is, the scene needed to be self-contained because it's going to be on a workstation falling through the sky, right? It's not going to be on our mill network. It can't be on the pipeline. It can't have the internet. This needs to be completely self-contained. And then the last thing is, this scene needs to have impressive complexity, both for our creative idea of what this should be, and also because the whole point of this is to do something impressive as it's falling. Like it can't just be, a, a shader sphere in the middle of a gray background. Uh, so luckily, HP actually supplied us with a fully loaded HP Z8 Fury. So this was just like this actual absolute beast, 56 core processor, 4 top of the line RTX cards. So we were really eager to see how far we could push that. And so we moved on to kind of more of the technical decisions on here. I think the most important thing we're dealing with, we need a 30-second render, is like what render are we going to use for this project? I definitely wanted it to be something that was going to be able to take advantage of both the GPU and the CPU because they were both very powerful. We have 4 GPUs. Like it would be insane not to take advantage of them. This was when Karma XPU, Houdini's renderer, had just gone in beta release. So it seemed like maybe a good fit for this project. We had it available. Um, there were a couple of reasons why we thought this would be a good fit. The first one, like I said, it can take advantage of CPU and GPU rendering at the same time. So it checked that box. The second thing is that it comes with a vanilla installation of Houdini, and we were going to be, you know, installing this on several workstations on a set in the middle of the desert. And I didn't want to get into a situation where we were adding a bunch of plugins or something that needed tech support in order to get them working properly. So I really wanted to reduce the risk of something going wrong on the day of the shoot. The only real downside here was that no one at the mill at this time had actually used Karma before. So no one really wants to be the first person to try a new technology on a job. But in this case, it seemed kind of apt that we maybe go for something a little bit, cutting edge for us at the time. Fortunately, all of our early tests worked great. And then once that decision was made, it just kind of kept rolling into, let's just do this entire project in Houdini. And that also included using Solaris and USD, which I'll get into in a minute. So with those decisions made, we got to go into the fun part, which is probably my favorite part of this project, which is just tackling making the topography of Anza Borrego. I used Houdini's height fill toolset to do this, which is really established tools. A lot of you, if you're in VFX, you've probably even used these. But just in brief, you use procedural tools to build up the basic forms, and then you use some great simulation tools to add erosion and slump and other kinds of effects that actually make it look, realistic. And this is where having like a really powerful workstation really helped because I was able to keep just tweaking settings, run the sim again, tweak it again. I didn't have infinite time to do this job, so it really helped me nail that kind of Anza Borrego craggy, eroded mountain effect that we needed for this job. Moving on to kind of using Solaris. This was the first time that we were really kind of dipping into Solaris at the mill. So there was a little bit of a learning curve there. If you don't know, Solaris is Houdini's scene building, layout, and lighting context, and it's using the universal scene description framework. We did all of the layout, looked up and lighting within Solaris. It has a really great workflow, as you can see if you're not familiar with it. It's all node-based. It has a really clear flow of what's happening. And at the start of the project, we were using Houdini 19, but we quickly moved to 19.5 because that was where the newest features of Solaris were, which we needed to take advantage of. So the layout in Solaris, the team on this project was super small. It was just myself and John Pozo, who's one of our asset artists at the mill. Being in Solaris, like I said, it means you're using universal scene description. And I describe our approach to USD on this project as USD light, because this project was one scene, it's one camera, it's one render. It wasn't like a complex task that's going to have a lot of back and forth between a bunch of departments. But using USD did end up having like a really big benefit later on, which I'll talk about when I talk about converting the scene to Unreal. I want to take one brief moment to thank Colin Kennedy, who's one of our lead software developers at the mill, for helping me through all of the finer technical points of using USD. Every time I kind of got in the weeds, he came and rescued me on this project. Talked a little bit about Solaris layouts. It's no surprise it's a great tool. It's one of its main purposes. I just wanted to really quickly just touch on, we converted all of our assets to USD. We didn't sort of just try to pipe the height fields in directly. And you can see that like the viewport feedback was really great. Even with full volume rendering on, it only takes less than a second for it to kind of resolve and you to see where things are going. So it really helped make the layout go quickly. The plant scattering, we sourced a bunch of appropriate Megascans assets and converted them all to USD within Houdini, and then did typical scattering using height field scattering and other traditional Houdini methods, and then just instanced those within Solaris as like USD instancing. So it was extremely performant in the render and pretty quick to set up as well. Lastly, we were using Material X. That's Karma's, native shading language. If you're not familiar, obviously Material X is kind of old news for a lot of us at this point, but it's an open look dev description. So, it worked well for this project. We weren't doing interchange, which is one of the biggest reasons you'd use Material X, but it's interesting to, use it on this project. All of our shading networks, including the volumes, were using Material X, and probably the terrain shaders were the most complex of all of them. They were using a lot of the kind of custom attributes from the height fields to drive where different textures were being placed and the colors of them. And it was pretty straightforward to set up. It's really kind of come a long way since it was first introduced. One last little bonus bit is that about a few months after this project delivered, we kind of came and revisited it because they wanted to do the project in Unreal for NAB. So I spent a little bit of time converting this project to Unreal. One thing that really came in handy is that because we were using Solaris and it was in USD, all of the layout was able to import into Houdini really easily. It was not even with any special setup. I just literally took the last, the scene USD file and imported it. Not everything came in perfectly. Like there were some Unreal specific things we had to set up. Mainly like the lighting and volumes were quite different and needed to be, generated differently. But I thought it was just like a really interesting example of using USD on this really small scale, where we usually think about USD as something that you're going to build like an entire pipeline around, but it's also at this point pretty useful for even just one artist trying to get something from one software to another. It's not too onerous to to do that and use USD as the transfer. Um, let's see. Because it was so easy and I had extra time, I just got to play around with some of the things that, Unreal does better. Like I added like a dynamic sky, added some silly Niagara simulations to make it even more kind of magical. And, just in the end, it was a really pretty seamless transition. Yeah, so from Houdini to Unreal, this project ended up being a really great test case for some new technology for us. And yep, I'm kind of lastly, I think, and I'm sure HP will be happy about this. We're going to talk a little bit about the actual impact and the how big of a difference using the HP Z8 Fury really did. Um, so what the difference does it really make? I think like the clearest contrast between our current generation of computers and what the Z8 was doing for us is that when we were first setting up the scene, like the most basic beginning version of this scene was taking 4 to 5 minutes to render in Karma XPU, and when we received the Z8 and got to transfer everything over and start working and doing our tests there, it was immediately under 20 seconds. So we were able to keep adding all the detail. Like I was thinking I'm going to need to make game res assets and like really have to cheat this thing. But it ended up being, we didn't do any special prep really. We weren't being, idiots about how much heaviness we were putting in that scene. But we were able to add everything we wanted to and still hit that 30-second render time. And like I said, it also really impacted the amount of iterations we were able to do in that time frame. Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to thank you all for watching this talk. Hope you're having a great SIGGRAPH. I wanted to thank HP in particular and Barbara for inviting me here and listening to us. And anyway, I'll leave you with the spot. Enjoy all the other, groundbreaking AI presentations for the rest of your day. So thank you.
For VFX artists, building complex worlds in CG takes a ton of computing power. The more power we have, the less time we waste. A scene like this would normally take 5 minutes to render. Today, we're giving the new Z8 Fury 30 seconds. From 14,000 feet, that's all the time we've got. The latest Intel Xeon processor with advanced denoising speeds up multi-threaded renders so we can create assets faster. And with hybrid rendering, we're able to scale up when we need to.
10 seconds to threshold. 4 seconds. 3, 2. Render complete. Release. You're in the clear.
With Z by HP, we get the performance we need to stay ahead of our industry. Whether you're working in VFX, machine learning, or language processing, Z8 Fury with the latest Intel Xeon processor is changing what's possible for all of us.
Did the workstation actually survive the fall?
Yes, yeah, it did. It's still operational. It's actually at the mill office still. So, yeah, it works.
Still being used.
Yeah, it's a little dusty. A day on set is always a little bit traumatic for anyone. So it still operates well, though.
Battle scars
Yeah.
are a badge of honor, right?
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thanks. Any other questions? All right. Cool. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.